But I was thinking the other day about how we need to be consistent. And I have a problem, and this is not what Rawiri did, right? But this is in the same circle. I've been having this conversation in my head for 2 weeks now. I have a problem with doxing. I think we all have a problem with doxing, don't we? So therefore, when we see a person, a white supremacist, let's say, who we oppose, and then a left-wing activist going on and going, come on, internet, tell me who this is. I have a problem with that because that's doxing. Tell me who this is. Tell me what their job is. You know, we had a conversation. Obviously, I completely support Victoria Jacobs.
Okay.
I completely support Victoria Jacobs. I completely support the anti-co-governance protesters. But they found out who the people were. Then they broadcasted who they were. And they included things like their jobs and that sort of thing. When that happens to people like Byron Clark, we go, what the fuck are you doing? That's inappropriate. And all I'm going to say is you can't have it both ways. If it's not appropriate for people to broadcast Byron, and I don't think it is, workplace where he is, yada, 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 then actually you can't do that to people who have a different view from you, even if they are the most fucking abhorrent people in the world. I have a problem with that. And it made me think about that again today with the Rawiri situation. Now, he's used parliamentary privilege to say something. We don't know what. If it's beyond the pale, he's going to need to suffer the consequences for it. And if it was David Seymour doing the same thing against, I'm assuming he said something about an opposition political activist person, the opposite, we'd be up in arms about it. So I don't want to be, I'm not a fence sitter, but I'm consistent. I know you're going to explode in a second because I've basically said we have to not broadcast white supremacist names and where they work sort of thing. But I think if we're going to oppose that for our guys, we cannot expect or participate in it for the other guys. That's how I feel, at least anyway, Joey.
Yeah, okay, so two things with this, right? I think the court case that's being discussed, and I am obviously going to be very careful about how I speak around here. The court case that's being discussed, the argument is that the suppression has been extended because the potential for it to have an effect on the election.
Are you talking about the case for, hang on, what I already talked about today? Because I literally know nothing about it.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is what I'm talking about.
So there's a court case.
I know all about it.
You can tell me after.
The second part of what you're talking about there is something that I have personally wrestled with for as long as I've been in anti-Nazi, anti-white pride groups, is at what point do you go a little bit further? And the example that I have is like in the group that I was part of, I remember having weeks-long arguments with people because we went after people that had an online presence, and we wanted to find who they were offline. And in one case, we found out that one of the organizers of the group that we were looking at was working with at-risk youth and was currently going, what was it? It was in family court at the moment, but he was trying to get custody of his kids. And we debated that for weeks. Is it appropriate that a leader of a white national group, a literal neo-Nazi, like a classical, like we're not even talking about like the fancy clean-cut Nazis we have now, just a straight-up Nazi. Do we dox him? Do we dump the documents and the stuff that we had found in the laps of the appropriate people? Was that the right thing to do? And we argued about that for ages.
So can I tell you what I'd do? To deliver that information to the employees and the people that need. I mean, just because, I mean, what's the opposite of a Nazi? Like, what's on the furthest to the Antifa, right? Let's say it's Antifa. We don't really have, I don't know.
Yeah, Antifa or say climate crisis or something like that.
I think there's also, I don't have a problem with finding out who people are, right? That's investigative journalism on some level. I don't have a problem with delving into all of that. I'm just saying if we don't agree with doxing, if we don't want people turning up to our activists' workplace and broadcasting where they work, then we can't do it to the other side. But what we can do is go to that workplace and go, are you aware that your employee X? Are you aware? You know, you can do that, But that's not just going on the internet to put people's names and details and jobs in there to then let the fucking Wild West, which is the internet, have a crack at them from every side. I'm not into that. I'm not ever going to be a part of that. And I know there's going to be some people probably who don't watch this show, but who are further left than me. They go, fuck them Nazis, they deserve everything. And on some level, I kind of agree, fuck them Nazis, they deserve everything. But I also know that we don't want it done to our extreme activists. So I don't think it's okay to do it for them. Like I saw the other day on TikTok, someone going, okay, internet, tell me who this person is. And then they told them, and you go a few more TikToks later on, and they'd broadcast everything about the person, who they were, their job, where they were. And all these people who were in my TikTok feed, left-wing activists, are all going, woohoo, we got them, woohoo. It's like, but if it was the other way around, you'd be like, this is a crime. You just can't. Look, I'm not a fence sitter.
Yeah.
I just want to be consistent, and I want to, and I want to protect my own. And so to protect my own, I won't do to them what I don't want done to me.
Yeah, and in the case that I was talking about, we settled on what you described there. There were documents that were delivered to his employer. There were documents delivered to the courts.
Well, that's not doxing.
That sort of thing.
That's investigative journalism.
Yeah.
Right? Doxing is very different.
Yeah. And look, there's been heaps of cases where doxing has gone wrong. Like the Boston Marathon bombing. Reddit went fucking mental on that and went all amateur detective and ended up pointing the finger at two completely unrelated people on the other side of the country, and it wrecked their lives. They lost their job. They had people trying to attack them. All sorts of stuff. It just it's such a line. But yeah, it's that whole cool. Don't put it out on the internet, but maybe put the information in front of the people that need to know who they're working with.
100%. Like I'm down with that. And also though, and I guess I'm kind of talking us down a little bit when I'm saying this. If there was I'm just using white supremacist because it's a lovely buzzword. There was a white supremacist involved in a protest that obviously had nefarious actions even above and beyond, let's say, what the Stop COVID governance people were aware about. I would probably first and foremost take that to a journalist who can then vet it, who has the resource behind them to make sure that what they're saying is true. I mean, there's a guy called Christian Picciolini. You guys should look him up. Christian Picciolini. I've had him on my other podcast. He's a former white supremacist. He now works in the area of how to drag people out of white supremacy. But if someone kind of misconstrued him based on his past and then broadcast what he was today, which was what he was at the past, and got it wrong, there's checks and balances. As much as people don't want to think about this, there are checks and balances in a real journalism. We're not journalists. I'm not a journalist. Yes, I work journalistically, but I'm not a qualified journalist. We have no editors to check our things. We have no law department to make sure we're saying the right thing. Maybe not radio stations, but if it's going to be an official op-ed piece or something, they do. They do. And I think the difference between identifying someone once it's been vetted and gone through and put into an official capacity versus, hey, we got this guy and they work at the BP down the road are two very different situations.
Yeah. And we use Byron as an example, and that is the case of two quite extreme personalities absolutely latching onto him and disseminating where they thought he lived, which was incorrect.
Yeah.
But that address got bomb threats. They were clearly trying to follow him. They found his workplace. They walked into his workplace, which provoked an absolute crisis response from his employer. And they're continuing to try to do this.
Yeah.
So yes, in the comments, to me, doxing is sharing those details publicly online with no control. Completely agree.
I think
Either
sharing
side
them,
is wrong.
I think sharing them publicly online, and an addendum to that is also without a professional context. Like, for example, if it was newspaper X writing a story, they probably wouldn't put where the person worked. They might put is a real estate agent. They probably wouldn't put what suburb they lived in. They might say lives in Dunedin. So there's also things that you can do to tell the story without, because even if they're the most disgusting person in the world, even if they are a white supremacist, if they're a misogynist, if they're a racist, if they're all of those things, they might live in a house with 3 small innocent children. So I don't want my guys turning up there and giving havoc to the horrible father or person in the house and traumatizing the innocent children either. It's just, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. And I think, look, this sort of bounces around. Sometimes people get quite frustrated with suppression orders in the courts and stuff like that. And there's been a lot of flirtation in the last few years of seeing how close to the line that you can get. But the risk is, if you get it wrong, the person that you're trying to expose gets off because this court case is compromised and that sort of thing. It can be really frustrating when it's as vague as prominent New Zealand sports person or prominent New Zealand entertainer or prominent political figure. It's vague, right? And it casts doubt on everybody. But that's down to people that may be catching blowback on that and going, well, they say it's a prominent political figure. I'm a prominent political figure. I'm going to stick my hand up and say, it's not me. That's the only thing that can happen.
Like Kerry Woodham did that when they talked about a high-profile female broadcaster who's been done for drink driving who has name suppression. Kerry Woodham came out the next day and said, just so you know, because a lot of people think it is, it's not me. So she did that. Can I also say what Rob said is, we're all in agreement here, I think. Doxing is about sharing specific information, sharing a person's name and clear connections to white nationalism is not doxing. I don't disagree with that, but I think what I see on our side as well is then them saying, and they work for, and they go, I agree with that. Such and such is a white supremacist and has links to Zealandia, Action Zealandia, fine. And they live in this suburb and they work for this workplace. That's the stuff I'm talking about. That's the stuff that I'm going too far. And I unfortunately, I see the left doing it from time to time and then complaining about when the right does it. Because, that's all I'm saying. And it's really based around the Rawiri conversation where, I don't know, whatever he said, that if he has stepped over a line, then there needs to be some kind of punishment. Is such the wrong word? Consequences.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because we'd expect it we'd expect it if Luxon stepped over the line.
Yeah, I mean, statements in the House have their own rules, right? It's you can say things under privilege and that sort of thing. I don't think this is one of them, but the absolute balls of them to do it on one of the last days, sitting right next to David Seymour is something else. And to end on a positive, I really liked his tie. He has to wear a tie in the House. That's a good one to choose.